He was just changing his Wi-Fi settings outside his own home, when suddenly, a woman called 911 on him. But when the cops showed up, what they uncovered left everyone speechless. You won't believe what really happened. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. I pay for this. Karen's outburst shocks the neighborhood. It was a typical, peaceful Saturday morning in the quiet suburbs of Crestwood Hills. The sun was shining. Kids were riding bikes down the street. Dogs were being walked, and the sound of lawnmowers hummed faintly in the distance. It was one of those slow, relaxing mornings where nothing dramatic was supposed to happen. But all that peace was shattered when Karen, yes, that kind of Karen, came stomping out of her front door like a woman on a mission. She was wearing mismatched slippers, a robe that hadn't been washed in days, and holding her smartphone in the air as if it were a weapon. Before anyone could blink, she was halfway across the street, storming toward her neighbor Greg's house. Her voice echoed down the entire block as she shouted, "I know you changed the Wi-Fi password. You can't just cut me off like that. I pay taxes." People poked their heads out of windows. A man watering his plants paused, hose still running. Even a teenager who was normally glued to his phone looked up to see what the commotion was about. Greg, her unassuming neighbor, had just come out to water his front garden. He was a tech consultant, quiet and polite, someone who waved at everyone, but mostly kept to himself. So, you can imagine his surprise when Karen charged at him like a bull. "Excuse me?" Greg asked, clearly caught off guard. Karen's eyes were wide with fury, and she pointed her phone at him as if it was a courtroom exhibit. "My internet went out this morning," she barked. "And I know it's because you changed the password." Greg blinked. Yeah, I updated the Wi-Fi password this morning for security. What does that have to do with you?" The moment he said that, Karen exploded. Figuratively, of course. "Don't play dumb. I've been using your network for months. I have important things to do. My son has school assignments. I need to work. You can't just block me like that." Greg was stunned. "Wait, you were using my Wi-Fi? Without permission?" Karen scoffed, as if she were the victim here. "Well, it's not like you were using it all. And it's been working fine. So why change it?" What Karen didn't know, or didn't care about, is that using someone's private Wi-Fi without their permission is not only unethical, but in some places, it's also considered illegal. Now, here's the kicker. Greg had no idea Karen had ever connected to his network. He had noticed his internet had been running slower than usual recently, so he figured it was time to update his router settings and change the password. Standard stuff. But what he didn't realize was that his small security measure would spark a neighborhood meltdown. "Look, I didn't give anyone my password," Greg said calmly. "You must have guessed it somehow, but I never agreed to share my connection." But Karen wasn't having it. It was Smith Family 123. It wasn't hard to guess. If you didn't want people using it, you should have made it more secure. Greg blinked in disbelief. "So, you're admitting you guessed it and used it without permission, and now you're mad because I changed it?" Karen crossed her arms, breathing heavily. "Yes, because now I'm cut off from the internet, and it's your fault." At this point, a small crowd had gathered. A few neighbors had stepped out onto their porches, coffee mugs in hand, silently watching the showdown unfold like a live reality show. Someone even started recording on their phone. "This is crazy," Greg muttered, stepping back slightly. "Ma'am, I think you need to leave." But Karen kept going, now raising her voice even louder. She shouted about how she was a tax-paying citizen, how neighbors were supposed to help each other, and how digital access was a basic human right. "You're heartless, Greg. What kind of neighbor are you?" One older lady across the street whispered, "The kind who doesn't like freeloaders." Someone else chuckled. Meanwhile, Greg stayed cool, refusing to engage further. "Look, I'm not trying to be rude, but you're using something you weren't supposed to. I'm just protecting my own internet." Karen's face turned red, not just from embarrassment, but from rage. She stomped her foot and declared, "Fine. If you won't fix this, then I'm calling the police. This is harassment." Greg raised an eyebrow. "You're calling the police?" "Because I changed my Wi-Fi password." Karen didn't answer. She was already dialing 911. Satellite antenna, the secret's out. She was stealing Wi-Fi. As the neighborhood slowly began to piece together what was really going on, the truth behind Karen's meltdown was finally revealed, and people were shocked. but not entirely surprised. Turns out, Karen had somehow guessed Greg's original Wi-Fi password months ago. It wasn't anything complicated, just your standard Smith Family 123, a password Greg had set back when he first installed his router and hadn't thought much of since. He figured it was private. After all, who would try to guess it? Well, Karen would. According to several neighbors, Karen had quietly been bragging for weeks, if not longer, about her little life hack. One woman said she heard Karen joke during a neighborhood walk that she was too smart to pay for internet. Another recalled Karen saying, "Why would I pay for Wi-Fi when I can use Greg's? He's got more than enough bandwidth." But while Karen may have thought she was being clever, most people just found it, well, shady. She treated it like she found a cheat code for real life, one neighbor later said. But it was just plain theft. Digital theft, but theft all the same. It all came crashing down the moment Greg updated his router password that morning. It was a routine update for him. He noticed some weird slowdowns in his internet connection. Recently, and being a tech consultant, he decided it was time for a cleanup. That meant new settings, stronger encryption, and of course, a new password. He didn't think twice about it, but when Karen woke up and discovered that her connection was gone, she immediately panicked and then exploded. She charged across the street with the fury of 1,000 buffering YouTube videos, waving her phone around as if it were proof of a global injustice. "You changed it. I know you did," she screamed at Greg's front door. "I can't connect. You've sabotaged me." Greg had no idea what she was talking about. "Changed what?" he asked, stepping out into the sunlight with a confused look on his face. "The Wi-Fi. You cut me off. How dare you?" That's when it started to click for Greg. "Wait, you were using my Wi-Fi." Karen crossed her arms like she was the one being wronged. "Yeah, and it was working fine until you decided to mess it all up. I need it for my son's school and my remote job. You've basically destroyed our ability to function." Greg, still calm, tried to reason with her. "Ma'am, that's not your Wi-Fi. It's mine. You never asked, and I never gave you permission." Karen wasn't having it. Her voice rose again. "This is sabotage. We had an unspoken agreement in this neighborhood. We help each other out. Now, let's be clear, there was no such agreement. In fact, most people had never even spoken to Karen for more than 5 minutes. She wasn't exactly known for being friendly, just loud and opinionated. The idea that someone owed her free internet access was absurd to everyone watching. Point one. Older gentleman, sipping his coffee from across the street, chuckled to himself and muttered, "Help each other out? She won't even return borrowed tools." But Karen, in her mind, believed she was standing on principle. "My son can't do his assignments without internet," she yelled. "My whole job is remote. We depend on this connection. How dare you just rip it away?" Greg stayed firm. "I'm sorry, but it's not my job to provide your family with internet. You can get your own plan." Karen's face turned a deep shade of red. She was shaking at this point, fists clenched, eyes locked on Greg like he had just committed a felony. Her breathing was heavy, and with every word Greg spoke, it was like gasoline on a fire. "This is unbelievable," she muttered. "You think you're better than everyone just because you work in tech." Greg calmly replied, "I just changed my password. That's all." But to Karen, it felt like a betrayal, a personal attack. She wasn't just mad. She felt humiliated. She had been exposed in front of the whole neighborhood. Her free ride was over, and now people were staring, recording, and whispering. Point one neighbor said later. You could see the moment she realized everyone knew she'd been stealing Wi-Fi. It was like a switch flipped. And it did flip. Karen turned away from Greg, pulled out her phone, and yelled loudly for everyone to hear. "I'm calling the police. This is a violation of my rights." Greg blinked in disbelief. "Wait, you're calling the cops because I changed my own password?" Karen didn't answer. She was already dialing, and that's when everyone realized this situation was about to go from ridiculous to downright unbelievable. Police arrive, but they're not here for Greg just when the neighborhood thought the situation couldn't get more bizarre. Karen dialed 911, still red-faced and fuming. She stood in the middle of the street, phone pressed to her ear, loudly proclaiming to the dispatcher, "Yes, I'm being digitally harassed. My neighbor is cutting off my internet access, and it's affecting my child's education and my job. This is urgent." She made it sound like some kind of emergency cyber attack was taking place. Words like communication sabotage and wireless abuse were tossed around, terms that made very little sense to the poor dispatcher on the other end. But since she insisted that someone was intentionally disrupting her home's access to vital technology, the dispatcher erred on the side of caution and dispatched 2 officers to the scene. In the meantime, Karen paced back and forth on the sidewalk like she was building a courtroom case in her head. She shouted to anyone nearby, "This is what happens when you give nerds power. He thinks he can just flip a switch and control people's lives." Meanwhile, Greg remained inside, sipping a cup of tea, still in disbelief that this had escalated to a police situation. Roughly 10 minutes later, a patrol car pulled up. The 2 officers stepped out, calm but clearly curious. After all, this wasn't exactly a standard call. They were met immediately by Karen, who launched into a dramatic retelling of her suffering. "He's weaponized the Wi-Fi, officers. He changed the password overnight without notifying anyone. This is digital harassment." The officers politely asked, "Ma'am, whose internet are we talking about here?" Karen gestured angrily toward Greg's house. "That man's. I've had access for months. Then this morning, bam, it's gone." The officers, maintaining professional poker faces, knocked on Greg's door. He answered calmly and greeted them with a slight smile. "Hey, officers. I figured this was coming." Greg then explained everything with quiet confidence. He had recently noticed his internet was lagging, ran a diagnostic, and saw multiple unfamiliar devices connected. Concerned, he changed the router settings and password as a standard security measure. "I didn't even know Karen was using it," Greg said. "I never gave her my password." To prove it, Greg invited the officers inside and showed them his router, the new login credentials, and a screenshot from the router's dashboard showing recently connected devices. He even pointed to a suspiciously labeled one, Karen's iPhone. The officers thanked him and stepped back outside, where Karen was still pacing. "He's making it sound like I'm a hacker," she yelled before they even said a word. "But I've had that password for months. It's not fair for him to just change it." The officers exchanged a look. "Ma'am," one of them said slowly, "are you saying you've been using your neighbor's private internet without permission?" Karen hesitated, realizing she may have said too much, but it was too late. "Well, yeah, but it wasn't hurting anyone. It's just Wi-Fi, and we live in the same community. We're supposed to support each other." The second officer stepped in. "Using someone's network without their consent is unauthorized access, ma'am. That's actually considered theft of service in some jurisdictions." Karen's smug expression vanished. Her confidence crumbled. "In real time. But he never said I couldn't use it," the first officer replied. "He didn't have to. It's his property. Just like you can't walk into someone's garage and take their bike just because the door was open." Karen stood frozen. Her attempt to paint herself as the victim was falling apart fast. The officers advised her to cease any further attempts to connect to Greg's network and to look into setting up her own internet service. They reminded her that calling 911 for non-emergencies could also be considered misuse of emergency services. And just like that, the narrative flipped. What started as a bold, loud demand for justice was now an awkward, humiliating warning delivered in front of half the neighborhood. Greg stepped out again, hands in his pockets. "Am I good to go, officers?" he asked. They nodded. "You did nothing wrong." Karen, meanwhile, was left standing alone in her slippers, looking like she wanted to vanish into the sidewalk. Her voice was gone, her posture deflated. And the neighbors, they were loving it. Phones had been recording the whole thing from porches, behind bushes, even from a second-floor window. The video would soon go viral. But more on that in the next part. As the police returned to their vehicle and pulled away, one officer could be heard saying to the other, "People really calling 911 over Wi-Fi now, the digital age, folks. Wild times." The bombshell. Karen is already on probation. Just when everyone thought the situation had reached its peak, the shouting, the police, the public embarrassment, the real twist hit like a thunderclap. One of the officers, still on the scene, calmly stepped aside and pulled out his mobile data terminal. It was standard procedure to do a background check when things escalated like this. He typed in Karen's full name, which she had loudly provided earlier while insisting she was the victim of digital warfare. Within moments, the screen blinked back with something unexpected. Karen was already on probation. The officers eyebrows raised. He called his partner over, quietly showed him the screen, and they both nodded, as if silently confirming something serious. After wrapping up their quick discussion, the first officer approached Karen once more, this time with a different tone. It was still professional, but there was a subtle edge of gravity to his voice. "Ma'am, can you confirm your date of birth again?" Karen huffed. "You just asked me that." "Yes, ma'am. We're verifying something." Karen rattled it off, arms crossed, clearly annoyed that things weren't going her way. But she had no idea what was coming next. "Thank you," the officer said. "Then, we just received confirmation. You're currently on probation for a similar incident that occurred last year in Hillsborough County. Do you recall that?" The color drained from Karen's face. Suddenly, she wasn't shouting anymore. Neighbors who had been quietly filming began whispering. One gasped. Greg, standing to the side, looked confused. "Wait, similar incident?" The officer nodded. "Yes. According to the record, Ms. Karen was caught tampering with a public library's Wi-Fi system. She attempted to install an unauthorized signal booster and custom router to bypass user limits. It disrupted the entire network. She was fined, warned, and placed on a year-long probation." The neighborhood collectively gasped. People who had been watching from porches stepped closer, phones still recording. One neighbor mouthed, "No way." Karen's response? She doubled down. "That was different," she blurted out. "That library had slow internet, and I was trying to help people. They didn't appreciate innovation." The officer raised a hand to calm her. "Ma'am, we're not debating the past. But calling the police today and openly admitting you accessed your neighbor's network without permission might be considered a violation of your probation." Karen panicked. "This isn't a violation. It's a misunderstanding. He should have just shared it. It's not like I was hacking." But the officers had heard enough. One of them gave her the classic warning. "Ma'am, you might want to stop talking now." Karen didn't listen. "You people don't get it. This is digital oppression. This is gatekeeping of basic online rights. I should have free access." The officers remained stone-faced. Meanwhile, neighbors were now in full popcorn mode. What started as a minor tech squabble had turned into a full-blown local scandal. Someone even posted the unfolding drama to the neighborhood Facebook group. Under the hashtag Wi-Fi warfare within minutes, the post was blowing up. Comments like, "This is better than Netflix." Karen strikes again. "I knew something was off when she asked me for my Wi-Fi last month." Even the local homeowners association president chimed in with, "Let this be a reminder to all residents. Respect your neighbors and their networks." Karen, realizing she was being recorded from every angle, finally tried to save face. "This is harassment. You're all against me. You'll hear from my lawyer." One neighbor sarcastically replied, "Will your lawyer be logging in through Greg's Wi-Fi too?" The crowd chuckled. Even the officers cracked small smiles before regaining composure. At this point, the officers made one final decision. Because Greg declined to press charges, and since Karen hadn't actually caused damage to the network, just used it without permission, she wasn't arrested. But she was issued a formal citation and a notice sent to her probation officer. The warning was clear. One more violation, and the consequences will be a lot more serious. Karen muttered something under her breath and slowly turned to walk back to her house. The crowd watched in silence as she shuffled up her driveway. Head down for the first time all day, her Wi-Fi dreams crushed. Her neighborhood reputation ruined. Her status in the Facebook group legendary, but not in a good way. Greg, now a quiet suburban hero, simply turned to the officers and said, "Thanks, officers. I'll probably go with an even stronger password next time." They chuckled and nodded. Not a bad idea. And with that, the patrol car pulled away. But for the neighborhood of Crestwood Hills, this saga was far from over. Because by the next morning, the video of Karen's Wi-Fi freakout would explode across the internet. Mobile phone with Arrow, the aftermath, viral fame, and sweet justice. What started as a neighborhood squabble over Wi-Fi turned into an internet sensation almost overnight. Just hours after the police left and the crowd had dispersed, one of the neighbors, an amateur TikToker, uploaded a 45-second clip titled, "Karen wants free Wi-Fi, gets free police visit instead." The video showed Karen yelling, "I pay taxes, followed by her meltdown as the officers told her she was actually admitting to a crime, that it was golden internet content. The perfect mix of chaos, irony, and classic Karen energy. Within 24 hours, the video had racked up over 1.2 million views. By the 48-hour mark, that number had crossed 2 million, and it wasn't slowing down. Comment sections blew up. She really called 911 because someone changed their own password? Imagine stealing Wi-Fi and then acting like you're the victim. That's talent. This is why I password protect my toaster. The clip was reposted on Twitter, now called X, Instagram Reels, Reddit, and even made it into a YouTube compilation titled Top 10 Karen Meltdowns of the Month. Some users even auto-tuned her rant into a remixed song called Digital Oppression, the Wi-Fi anthem, which also went viral. Meanwhile, in the real world back in the quiet suburban neighborhood of Crestwood Hills, life started returning to normal, sort of. Karen, now infamous online and offline, refused to come out of her house for days. She reportedly turned off her phone and closed all her social media accounts after the hashtag Wi-Fi warfare started trending locally, but escaping. The consequences wasn't so easy. Following the police report, Karen's probation officer was notified immediately. After reviewing her actions and public statements, especially her own on-camera admission of stealing Greg's Wi-Fi, he filed a report to the local court that a hearing was scheduled to determine whether Karen had violated the terms of her probation, which included avoiding any form of cyber-related misconduct. Her penalty could include community service, a court-ordered tech ethics course, an extension of her probation, or, if the judge feels she knowingly broke the terms, a brief jail sentence. When asked for a comment, Karen released a short written statement through a local legal aid. I was misunderstood and unfairly portrayed online. I've learned my lesson and hope to move forward in peace. But her neighbors weren't buying it. One local mom posted. This is the same woman who once yelled at the mailman for delivering someone else's Amazon package. Peace isn't really her brand. Greg, the accidental hero. While Karen was dodging cameras and legal documents, Greg, the soft-spoken tech consultant at the heart of it all, became a surprise hometown celebrity. People he'd never met before dropped off thank you cards, homemade cookies, and even a gift card to Best Buy in case he wanted to upgrade his security. His inbox was flooded with interview requests, from local news to online talk shows. He politely declined most of them, saying he wasn't trying to be famous. But he did give one short interview to a local journalist who asked how it all started. His now legendary response: "All I did was change my password. I didn't expect to start World War Wi-Fi." That quote alone became a meme. People turned it into t-shirts, mugs, and even stickers for Wi-Fi routers. Local businesses got in on the trend too. A nearby coffee shop temporarily renamed their guest network SSID, World War Wi-Fi password. Not for Karen. Even the city council, in a lighthearted social media post, reminded residents to be good neighbors and not borrow bandwidth without asking, adding a wink emoji. The legacy of the password war. The whole situation became more than just a viral moment. It became a modern morality tale. The message was clear: entitlement plus technology equals trouble. It also sparked real conversations in communities across the country. Facebook groups and Reddit threads filled with people asking, is it okay to share Wi-Fi with neighbors? What are the legal risks of using someone else's network? How do you protect your router from freeloaders? Greg even started a blog about Wi-Fi security tips for everyday users. His first post: how to prevent your neighborhood Karen from stealing your internet. It went viral, too. And Karen? Well, her court hearing is still pending, and she's reportedly been trying to keep a low profile. But unfortunately for her, the internet has a long memory and a love for unforgettable drama. As one commenter put it, Karen didn't just burn bridges. She melted the modem. And that, folks, is how a changed password turned into a neighborhood saga, a national meme, and an unforgettable moment in the chronicles of modern Karens. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Would you call the cops over a password? Or just pay for your own internet? Let us know below. If you enjoyed this wild ride through Wi-Fi warfare, make sure to hit that like button, smash subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss the next jaw-dropping story. Speaking Head, got a crazy neighbor story of your own? Drop it in the comments. We might feature it in a future video. Until next time.